there is more news about Biden's dementia breaking. Have you seen this yet? Axios is reporting that Joe Biden didn't recognize George Clooney at the June 2024 fundraiser that Clooney hosted in LA, despite the two having known each other for 15 years.
I mean, are we
This
supposed
is
to
like-
be surprised,
I mean-
though? Like, what? I mean, yeah,
Well,
of course, but this is Clay.
I do think it explains why George Clooney wrote that op-ed, but what he should have done is wrote the op-ed and said
that
Joe Biden did not know who I was. He cannot be president anymore.
He refused to burn the ships. In fact, Cortez Scuttle didn't burn the ships, but that's a whole other conversation. He refused to go all in because he knew that there was a chance it would fail, and then he would have completely destroyed Biden's chance if he stayed in. So instead, he pushed that op-ed and didn't tell that should have been the first line. If that was the first line of Biden's op-ed, of Clooney's op-ed about Biden, there would have been no choice but to have an immediate, meeting and basically say, look, we're going to have the 25th Amendment going. What?
Sorry, I'm just laughing. The quotes from the book. George, an aide told Biden when he met Clooney at the fundraiser. George Clooney, the aide said. Oh, yeah, Biden said per the book. Hi, George. Clooney was shaken to his core. The president hadn't recognized him, a man he had known for years. Clooney wrote and said, we need a new nominee. He didn't say, I've known this guy for 15 years, and his brain is so deteriorated that he had no idea who we are. And look, I'm not trying to blow up George Clooney here, but you and I would freaking know George Clooney if we saw him, right? And we've never met him in our entire life because he is a famous movie star, just like I would know Julia Roberts if I saw her.
Here's also, though, what we cannot lose sight of as we're seeing these revelations. He shouldn't have been allowed to finish out his presidency. I know they'll say, oh, it was fine, and, there was no, he was not of sound mind. They should have said, you resign, or we're using the 25th Amendment. They should have said, you're out, because what if we get hit with a first strike from I'm sorry, the whole thing was a total sham, and we cannot let this go.
Let me also point this out, Buck. If George Clooney is saying Biden didn't recognize me, are you really telling me that all the high-end Hollywood people didn't hear that George Clooney story? For everybody out there that is claiming, how could we have known? When George Clooney isn't recognized by Biden in June of 2024, okay? Yeah. Everybody who's at a high level in Hollywood hears that story and is aware of it, and it didn't go public.
Well, here's what I think happened. And again, whatever they're telling you in this book is for a reason, and it's not to tell you the truth. They're trying to manipulate public opinion around this issue. Okay, these are partisans writing the book. They are partisans pushing this narrative. Clay, you've always asked, who ordered the code red? Who was the one who finally pushed him out? How did that conversation go? I think I had said initially when we had these discussions, Pelosi probably sat down with him and said, your family will be forever exiled from the Democrat elite. No cushy gigs for, your grandchildren. No waved into Brown and Harvard and whatever, even if they're total ne'er-do-well idiots.
Yep.
Which is classic for all these Democrat politicians' kids. They just wave in these kids that can barely spell. I think also she might have said, the Clooney story goes public if you don't step down. Now, that would be a total, that's a mutually assured destruction moment because that's saying we're going to give Trump the election. But if you're Joe Biden, then it's all over for you, right? Then and by the way, that story goes public, I don't think he's allowed to finish out his term. So that's the leverage that they may have had to get him to finally, Clay, he didn't want to go. What did he last? How long did he last
3 weeks after the debate.
How long?
3 weeks after the debate on June 27th.
3 weeks after that debate, he hung in there. He didn't want to go.
Yeah.
How'd they get him to go? I think they said, You either step aside, or rather, you either, step aside for the election and we'll let you finish your term, or we blow this whole thing up, 25th Amendment, Kamala becomes the president anyway, and you're done.
That's what somebody go back and pull this. What you just laid out is my theory for how they got Biden out. I think they threatened him with the 25th Amendment. It hasn't come public yet, but I think they said, you're not able to do the job. We are going to blow you up. Your option is you have to withdraw. And remember,
but also look at how craven that is, because the 25th Amendment, Clay, if they were willing to threaten to use it, it means that they should have used it.
Totally. I agree with you. But think about, it's fun for me, take a step back and think about how history will cover this, because we're living in the moment and sometimes stories can come and they can go. This story, I think, is going to echo for generations. Think about what happened, what we all experienced, Buck. June 27th, the debate, where Biden just comes out and is basically a catatonic zombie. Immediately calls begin to replace Biden. July 13th, Trump gets hit in the ear by an assassin bullet. July 21, Biden drops out. How many more consequential 3+ week periods in American presidential politics have we ever seen in our lives? Think about those 3 dates, Buck. June 27th, Biden-Trump debate. Biden is basically a zombie. July 13th, the guy that we still know nothing about, might I mention, the guy in Butler, Pennsylvania, that is basically a ghost. We don't know anything about him. He doesn't have any background. He clips Trump's ear and almost blows his head off on television the day before the RNC starts. July 21st, Biden drops out. All 3 of those, boom, 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 historically resonant in a way that rarely happens. I'm telling you, long after we are all dead, everybody listening to this right now is gone. They will be writing books about this 2024 campaign, which people 100 years from now are going to be like, there's no way all this actually happened.
This is the craziest election. Is there a crazier election? I don't know that there's a crazier. American. You'd have to go, like Civil War era or something?
1864. I think you'd have to go to like 1860 or 1864. I really do.
But definitely 21st century or 21st century, 20th century, no question.
In the lives of anybody living right now, maybe the election in 44 that happened during World War II, if some of you were old enough to have remembered that, when Roosevelt, they covered up his mental and physical deterioration.
Yeah, but they were successful.
War. Yeah.
They were successful, though, right? That's the thing.
Yeah.
And this is the other crazy thing to keep in mind. Everybody, if Biden doesn't go to that debate,
that's why I say it's the story we need to know.
But they got desperate because Biden was sliding so much in the polls against Trump. They thought he could pull it off. They took the gamble. The gamble was he just has to look like his eyes are open, and they got to inject him with whatever they got to do for the night, and then we can turn this thing around, right? Then the media will help us carry this home. If he had just not done that debate, he would have been the nominee. And, on any given Sunday, man, who knows, right? I think Trump still wins that, but he would have been the nominee.
I think what happened, Buck, is the grand poobahs went to Biden. They said the stories coming out about Biden's mental and physical condition are bad. You have to prove that he has the wherewithal. Debate early. I think at some point we're going to find out that they put the pressure on Team Biden to prove that he was up to the job, and they didn't want it out publicly. But June 27th was Biden, just like the State of the Union.
Well,
remember he did decent at the State of the Union?
I think you may be right. I think that the reason, though, I think the concern came from he was already losing. And he was an incumbent president, and he was already losing to Trump. So there was a desperation.
They forced him. Somebody who is in power forced him to do that June 27th debate. And again, George Clooney writes the editorial, but he's telling us 1/10 of the story when he says Biden needs to drop out. Are you planning to go overseas on vacation this summer? IRS may have other plans for you. If you've received any IRS notice in the mail, don't ignore them. This never ends well. For starters, they have the authority to revoke your passport. IRS is serious when they write notices warning you of bank levies or wage garnishments. They'll follow through. You need to call the experts at Rush Tax Resolution now at 877-554-RUSH. If you own a business and are behind on payroll taxes, don't call the IRS on your own. They have the power to shut you down and come after you personally. Get a Rush Tax attorney on your side. Get protected today. Mention our names, and Rush Tax Resolution will do a free IRS transcript investigation. $500 value. Rush Tax does this for free upfront because they will only take your case if they know they can help you, period. 877-554-7874. That's 877-554-7874. RushTaxResolution.com.